If you observe yourself carefully, you'll start to see that you have 4 or 6 or sometimes more different personas, different masks you wear with different people and in different circumstances. Your posture changes, your facial expression changes, your tone of voice changes, even your temperament. Everyone unwittingly dons different masks. For example, when you are at work as opposed to when you're at home with just your mate, or when you're with a small group of friends versus a room full of strangers. Sometimes slight, sometimes extreme changes happen when we're at church compared to when we're in the doctor's office, or when we're talking to a child, or a parent, or a teacher, or a policeman. Even more extreme are the personas we display when we start to feel a little sorry for ourselves, or when we turn irritated or bitter, or venomously angry. And it's not just that our demeanor changes or that our voice inflects in a different way. It's that our internal feeling of self adjusts to the changing world of people and circumstances. In one situation, we feel strong and appear to be strong. In another situation, we feel and act weaker. But we usually shift so quickly between these different representations of ourselves that we don't notice exactly what or why it has happened. And we fail to see the contradictions and the inconsistencies in our different personalities. Something you can notice, however, is that you may become uncomfortable when, for instance, your husband or wife visits you at your workplace. Maybe you tighten up a little. Maybe you become more braggadocious. The same thing can be seen when you find yourself acting one way with close friends and another way with the new neighbors, and yet another way with your daughter's new boyfriend. Why all of this change? Why so much shape-shifting of our psychological sense of self? Why, rather than remaining true to the core of our being, do we reach for the most psychologically comfortable mask we can find and take up temporary residence in that as our feeling of self? We do it partly so as to be perceived a certain way by others. But more importantly, we do it so as not to expose the silent, invisible substance that awareness itself really is. When you boil it down, it means that we're afraid to be our own being. It's strange yet true that we suppose if we were to always be our simple, true self, we'd be misunderstood, disliked, judged, and somehow rejected. So strong is this fear that we completely sacrifice the internal presence of our own awareness in exchange for the personification of who we think we should appear to be for others. All of this unwitting role play then becomes our identity. Not only the identity that we suppose we are projecting to the external world, but the identity of who we internally imagine we are as a person. This feeling of identity and all its variations of me then squash and obscure the reality of what we really are at our deepest core, which is the pure being of awareness. This silent, invisible, pure presence of being is what Jesus was referring to when he said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Shakespeare said the same thing less mystically, but no less poetically in his play Hamlet, when he wrote, "This above all, to thine own self be true." And the poet Omar Khayyam was even more cryptic. "One thing is certain, and the rest is lies." The deep-felt words of all these men, however, are not easy to actualize because there's a price, a sacrifice to be paid for the truth they all spoke of. It begins with seeing the falsehood of the different masks we wear and understanding what it means to renounce these masks internally, and to start to recognize when, for psychological reassurance, we're about to don a mask, and instead to simply be internally and to learn to live from there, from the deepest realization of our own pure presence.